I want to focus on the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario and the Toronto District School Board. These are institutions that are unique in some senses to Ontario, but I believe they are reflective or perhaps even lead the way in the development of the kind of curricula that are or soon will be used across Canada and the rest of the Western world, given how fast information now travels. The first question we might ask is, what should children and young adults be taught and not taught from kindergarten through high school? My answer to that is quite straightforward. They should be taught to read and write and speak skillfully and gracefully, and that should be done with a minimum of political bias. If you agree with that sentiment, however imperfect you might find it, then you need to realize that it is not in the least the guiding principle of the current public education system. The people who are teaching your children no longer believe, for example, that children can be taught without political bias. They also believe that their particular political viewpoints are so self-evidently and finally correct that it is proper and just to concentrate on inculcating them into children as early as kindergarten, regardless of what their parents or anyone else might want. I do not believe that this is a goal shared by even a majority of teachers, and many have written to me indicating their dissatisfaction. But a small, noisy, domineering, victimhood-claiming coterie of radically left-wing thinkers have commandeered the controls and are steering the ship where they want it to go, screaming bloody murder if anyone dares to question, or worse, oppose. Both the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario, which operates at the provincial/state level, and the Toronto District School Board, which operates at the level of the city, have explicitly adopted a social justice program and have implemented curricula based on its principles from kindergarten through grade 8, with similar programs operating in the remainder of junior high and high school. The ETFO, elementary teachers, remember, is equity-oriented. This means equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. And that is a radical left-wing, even Marxist goal. They describe their own organization as a, quote, social justice union, end quote, and have produced educational material aimed, in their own words, at fostering a climate of social justice in Ontario. This material is part of the Social Justice Begins With Me initiative. The ETFO, Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario, claims furthermore that the education system is a key means of delivering messages around inclusion, diversity, and welcoming environments. They have developed a curriculum of children's literature aimed at delivering precisely this message, thus bending art, as ideologues always do, to the purposes of propaganda, justified by their belief that their ends justify their means. The Social Justice and Equity Project encompasses all elements of the curriculum, including language arts, mathematics, science and technology, and the arts. Even the very act of reading is taught from a neo-Marxist/postmodernist radical left perspective, as students are encouraged, after finishing a given book, to identify the power claims of the author and to note which groups have been excluded from consideration by that author. The Toronto District School Board, for its part, has its own social justice action plan, committed as it is to fairness, equity, human rights, and economic egalitarianism. That is the slogan of a political manifesto, not a proper statement for an administrative board whose proper role is the local governance of the education system. No matter. The TDSB unabashedly announces its progressive agenda, with no consideration whatsoever given to the fact that indoctrination and education exist at precise cross purposes to one another. Their policies continue. The TDSB has a shared responsibility to contribute to positive social change, both locally and globally. Learning about and engaging in social justice issues such as equity, diversity, abuse against women, poverty reduction, and environmentalism will make school more relevant and meaningful for all students. It will also ensure, as much as this can be done by fiat, that students within the system adopt the political stance deemed appropriate by their administrators and teachers. Now, make no mistake about it, I know perfectly well that there is a need for right and left-wing viewpoints. The right has a proclivity towards counterproductive stasis and sameness, and has to be balanced by the more innovative thinking that is part and parcel of the psychological processes that also drive left-wing political belief. So my objection to the indoctrination of children by the state and city has nothing specifically to do with the dislike of the opinions of those who occupy what is, after all, half of the political spectrum. But the fact that such views are a necessary part of balanced public debate by no means justifies transforming public education into a system of indoctrination, and that is exactly what has happened. It has to stop, and it has to stop now. Many people have already discussed with me their intent to pull their children out of the public education system because of this transformation, but that is not the proper solution. The system belongs, after all, to the parents and children who use it, and it is not right that any faction bends its function to their own use. So, I'm going to recommend something radical. I have no idea how to set the universities right in any simple manner. As some of you know, I've started working on an online humanities university, but that is a major project, unlikely to bear fruit until years in the future. The humanities, as they stand, broadly speaking, geography, history, languages and literature, gender studies, cultural studies, as well as many of the social and applied sciences, anthropology, sociology, social work, as well as law and the faculties of education most specifically, are occupied by radical left neo-Marxists who will stay in their positions for decades into the future. The corruption that characterizes their academic practices has spread widely into the general culture, political and corporate as well as educational, although it is only the latter that concerns us at the moment. I think the only real hope of forestalling further deterioration of the sort that would require, for example, large-scale exodus from the public school system, which I think is inevitable if present trends continue, is for the users of such systems, school children and young adults and their parents, to put a stop to its politicization. We have now reviewed evidence indicating widespread ideological corruption at the level of the professoriate, administration, university department, university, and higher education systems in general, as well as a refusal to admit to that corruption and a proclivity to name-call, deride, shame, and protest when such issues are brought to light. Such corruption particularly, although not uniquely, typifies the faculties of education, where those who teach your children are in turn taught. Because of this, the public education system has become politicized, and that politicization is broadening and deepening, presenting social danger in the form of the involuntary indoctrination of children and compromising the proper function of public education itself, which is the creation of autonomous, self-governing, free-thinking individuals. So I am recommending the following concrete actions. Affected and concerned families should first discuss the issues and formulate a plan. I think the following 2 books are invaluable, one more proximally, locally, and one more distally. There's a book called Understanding Postmodernism by Stephen R. Hicks. The whole book provides a good introduction to the problem, but the first chapter in particular provides a solid overview. I think the Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn is also required reading for many reasons, not the least of which is his masterful analysis of the relationship between radical left-wing thinking and the absolute collapse into tyranny and catastrophe that characterized all such experiments in the course of the last 125 years. More directly, I think students should, with the backing of their parents if possible, leave their junior high and high school classes if any of the following topics arise. This means they should stand up, note their objections to the content, This sounds like indoctrination to me rather than education, so I'm leaving. And then leave. Perhaps they could encourage a classmate/friend to videotape their actions and post it on YouTube. It wouldn't take very many students performing such an act to produce a very powerful effect, and it is certain that many who won't have the courage to do so will agree secretly that such action was necessary. Here are the topics I regard as indicative of indoctrination rather than education. Diversity, inclusivity, equity. Conveniently, these form the acronym DIE, which is exactly what the philosophy underpinning their grouping and use should be encouraged to do. White privilege, systemic racism, gender. I'm not claiming that there is nothing to be learned about such topics or even that they shouldn't be discussed. What I am saying is if they are brought up in an elementary, junior high, or high school classroom, the odds are very high that the lesson to be learned will be one driven by ideological/propagandistic concerns rather than one aimed at the inculcation of knowledge, wisdom, or skill. Here are the words again. Diversity, inclusivity, equity, white privilege, systemic racism, and gender. There will be mistakes made with such an approach. Some who discuss issues such as inclusivity and equity are going to be more reasonable than others. But that does not change the fact that the philosophy driving the pushing forward of such topics is essentially ideological and propagandistic. So I think such active resistance will get the point across very effectively. It is too bad that it has come to this, but in my opinion, it has. Think long and hard about it. My feeling is this: if effective action is not taken now to counteract the politicization of the public school curriculum, the need for such action will merely increase, and it will take much more to forestall the process later. Pick your poison. Good luck. The best to you and your family, and Happy New Year.